Captain Marcus Vale never expected to wake up in shackles aboard a Zephyrian battlecruiser. But Tuesday had a way of surprising him. The metal restraints bit into his wrists as he dangled from the detention cell ceiling, his boots barely touching the polished floor. Around him, the ship hummed with alien technology that made his teeth ache. "Well, this is cozy," he muttered, testing the strength of his bonds. The Zephyrians had always been thorough, but hanging prisoners seemed excessive even for their standards. His ship, the Stellar Vagrant, was probably being torn apart by their technicians right now. 20 years of modifications, gone. The cell door hissed open, revealing the towering figures in ceremonial armor. Between them walked someone who made Marcus's heart stop. She was unmistakably human, but everything else had changed. Where once stood Rebecca Torres, the archaeology student he'd known at the academy, now stood someone regal and commanding. Her dark hair was braided with silver threads, and her eyes held the weight of authority. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice carrying an accent he didn't recognize. "It's been a long time." "Becca?" The name escaped his lips before he could stop it. What are you doing here? And why are you dressed like Queen Rebecca of the Third Hegemony?" announced one of the guards. "Show proper respect." Marcus blinked, then laughed despite himself. "Queen, you? The same person who once got stuck in a ventilation shaft trying to retrieve a lost data pad." For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Amusement, maybe, or sadness. Then it was gone, replaced by the cool mask of royalty. "That was another life," she said. "You're here because your smuggling operation has been disrupting trade routes through Zephyrian space. I prefer independent cargo specialist," Marcus replied. "And I've been very careful to avoid your people's territory. Most of the time." Rebecca stepped closer, and he caught a whiff of something familiar, the same perfume she'd worn in college. "Some things never changed. The Zephyrian Council wants you executed," she said quietly. "Publicly, as an example to other human traitors. Cheerful bunch, your new subjects." Marcus studied her face, looking for any trace of the woman he'd once known. "So what's it going to be, Your Majesty?" "Off with my head." She turned away, clasping her hands behind her back. "There's another option. You have knowledge of human settlements in the Outer Rim, trade routes the hegemony doesn't know about. Information we need." "Information for what?" "There are reports of something moving in the dark spaces between systems. Ships that don't respond to hails, stations that have gone silent. The Council believes humans might be involved." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cell's temperature. "You think someone's building a fleet out there?" "I think someone's preparing for war," Rebecca said. "And if they are, I need to know about it before they decide to test their strength against Zephyrian worlds." The weight of her words settled. Between them, Marcus had heard rumors, whispers in cantinas about human ships gathering in the void. Most traders dismissed them as ghost stories, but Rebecca had always been smarter than most people gave her credit for. "So you want me to be your spy," he said. "I want you to help me prevent a war that could destroy both our species." Marcus looked at her. Really looked. The years had changed her, but underneath the royal bearing, he could still see traces of the idealistic young woman who dreamed of bridging the gap between humans and aliens. Maybe that's exactly what she was trying to do now. "All right," he said finally. "But I have conditions." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "You're hardly in a position to negotiate." "I get my ship back, my crew goes free, and when this is over, we part ways, no strings attached." She was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. "Agreed," she said at last. "But Marcus, if you betray me, there won't be anywhere in the galaxy you can hide." "Wouldn't dream of it, Your Majesty." Into the void 3 days later, Marcus found himself piloting the Stellar Vagrant through a nebula that looked like spilled paint. Against the stars, Rebecca sat in the co-pilot's seat, no longer wearing royal robes, but practical spacer gear that made her look more like the woman he remembered. The transformation was unsettling. "Next time I'm arrested by alien royalty, remind me to negotiate better accommodations," said Jake Morrison, Marcus's engineer, from the back of the cockpit. The stocky man was still nursing a bruised ego from their capture. "Getting stunned." Unconscious really messes with your sleep cycle. At least they fed us, added Vera Santos. Their navigator, the former military pilot, had adapted to their situation with typical pragmatism. That algae paste wasn't terrible. Rebecca ignored their banter, focused on the star charts displayed on her portable scanner. The last transmission from Outpost Meridian came from this sector, she said. They reported unusual energy readings before going silent. Define unusual, Marcus said, adjusting their course to avoid a particularly dense patch of stellar debris. Readings consistent with human warp drives, but the signatures were all wrong. Too powerful, too focused, like someone had taken standard Earth technology and amplified it beyond safe parameters. Jake leaned forward. That's not possible. Human warp cores have built-in limiters. Push them too hard and they'll tear themselves apart, unless someone found a way around the limiters. Vera said quietly, I've heard stories about rogue engineers working on experimental drives. The nebula began to thin as they approached the coordinates, revealing a sight that made them all fall silent. Outpost Meridian hung dead in space, its lights dark, its communications array twisted into scrap metal. But that wasn't what caught their attention. Surrounding the station were the remains of ships, dozens of them, scattered like broken toys across several thousand kilometers of space. Some were clearly Zephyrian vessels, their organic curves unmistakable even in death. Others were human designs, but modified beyond easy recognition. My God, Rebecca whispered. What happened here? Marcus brought them closer, careful to avoid the debris field. Jake, are you picking up any life signs? Negative. Station's been cold for at least a week, maybe longer. The engineer's voice was tight with professional concern. But Cap, you need to see this. Jake patched his scanner readings to the main display, highlighting several of the destroyed ships. These human vessels, they're not just modified. They're augmented with technology I don't recognize. Look at these power signatures. The readings showed energy patterns that seemed to twist back on themselves, creating loops that should have been impossible with conventional physics. Rebecca studied the data with growing alarm. This is beyond anything the hegemony has seen. She said, if humans develop this technology, then someone's been busy while the rest of us were playing politics. Marcus finished. He guided the ship toward the station's docking bay, noting the way the metal had been warped outward, as if by tremendous heat. Vera scanned for any intact data cores, already on it. There's something in the station's central hub, but it's heavily damaged. She paused, checking her readings again. Wait, there's another ship out there, beyond the debris field. It's running. Silent, but I can detect minimal power signatures. Marcus felt his blood chill. How minimal? Life support only. Someone's alive out there. Rebecca was already moving toward the equipment lockers. We need to investigate. Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully. That could be exactly what someone wants us to do. She stopped, looking back at him with eyes that held steel. My people are dead, Marcus, human and Zephyrian alike. If there's a survivor who can tell us what happened here, I need to hear it. And if it's a trap, then we spring it carefully. She pulled on a pressure suit with practiced efficiency. But we don't run. Not from this. Marcus exchanged glances with his crew. Jake shrugged. They'd followed worse plans. Vera was already plotting an approach vector that would keep them away from the largest debris. Clusters? All right, Marcus said, suiting up. But we do this my way. Fast insertion, minimal exposure. And at the first sign of trouble, we're gone. Rebecca nodded, sealing her helmet. Agreed. But Marcus, yeah, thank you for trusting me. He looked at her through the helmet's faceplate, seeing something vulnerable beneath the royal composure. Don't thank me yet. We haven't found your answers. No, she said quietly. But we're going to. The survivor's Talith derelict ship drifted like a tomb among the stars, its hull scarred by weapons fire that had punched through armor plating like paper. Marcus maneuvered the stellar vagrant alongside, matching the vessel's slow rotation. Through the viewports, they could see emergency lighting flickering weakly in the corridors. Ship's designation is Fortune's Edge, Vera reported from her station. Registry shows it's a converted mining hauler, registered to independent operators. No criminal record on file. That's refreshing, Jake muttered. checking his portable scanner. Life signs are coming from what looks like an engineering compartment. Some bodies hold up in there pretty tight. Rebecca studied the tactical display, noting the weapon scarring along the ship's hull. These aren't energy weapon burns, she said. This is kinetic damage. Someone used mass drivers to tear this ship apart. Marcus felt a familiar chill. Mass drivers were brutal weapons, crude but effective. They fired solid projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed, turning ships into scrap and crews into memories. The fact that someone had survived such an attack was remarkable. Docking tubes damaged. He announced, "We'll have to go, Eva, and cut our way in." The boarding process took 20 minutes of careful maneuvering through twisted metal and severed power cables. Marcus led the way, followed by Rebecca and Jake, while Vera remained aboard to monitor communications. The derelict's airlock had been manually sealed from inside, suggesting whoever was aboard had some engineering knowledge. "Hello." In there, Marcus called through the comm system once they'd established a connection. "This is Captain Vale of the Stellar Vagrant. We're here to help." The response came after a long pause, a woman's voice rough with exhaustion. "Thank God. I thought everyone was dead." "We're coming in," Rebecca said. "Are you injured?" "Nothing fatal, but you need to know, they're still out there. The ones who did this." The inner airlock cycled open to reveal a cramped engineering space lit by emergency strips. Huddled near a jury-rigged life support console was a woman in her 40s. Her spacer coveralls stained with oil and dried blood. Her dark skin was pale with shock, but her eyes were alert. "Diana Reeves," she said, struggling to sit up straighter. "Chief engineer on the Edge. Been hiding in here for 6 days." Rebecca knelt beside her, pulling medical supplies from her kit. "What happened here?" "We were responding to Meridian's distress call," Diana said, wincing as Rebecca cleaned a cut on her forehead. "Got here just as the attack was ending. Saw ships, human ships, but wrong somehow. They moved too fast, turned too sharp. Physics doesn't work that way." Jake frowned. "You said they were human vessels, built from human designs, but modified. Sleek black hulls, no identification markings. They hit Meridian first, tore through the station's defenses like they weren't there. Then they turned on us." Marcus studied the woman's face, looking for signs of deception or hallucination. He found only traumatized honesty. "How many ships? Dozen, maybe more. They worked together like a fleet, coordinated attacks. But here's the thing." Diana paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I recognized one of the voices on their communications." "Recognized? How?" Rebecca asked. "Commander Patricia Zhao. I served under her during the Titan mining conflicts. She was reported killed 3 years ago when her ship disappeared in the void sectors." The silence that followed was heavy with implications. If human officers were leading these attacks, it meant something far worse than simple piracy. Marcus felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. "Did they take prisoners?" he asked. Diana shook her head. "Killed everyone they couldn't use immediately, but they were selective about what they salvaged. Took all the advanced tech, left the rest, like they were shopping for specific components." Rebecca finished bandaging Diana's wounds, her expression thoughtful. "Building something," she murmured. "The question is what?" "I might know," Diana said reluctantly. She reached into her coveralls and pulled out a small data crystal. "Managed to record some of their transmissions before they noticed us. Most of it's encrypted, but there are fragments." Jake plugged the crystal into his scanner, frowning at the readouts. "This is military grade encryption, but it's human-based. Give me a few minutes." While Jake worked, Marcus moved to the viewport, staring out at the debris field. Ships and stations destroyed, crews murdered, technology stolen. Someone was building something in the dark between the stars, and they didn't care who died to. "Make it happen." "Got something," Jake announced. Audio fragment, partially decoded. The speaker crackled to life with a woman's voice. "Cold and professional. Phase to proceeding as planned. Resource acquisition exceeds projections. The director will be pleased. Begin preparations for the demonstration." "Demonstration," Rebecca repeated. Diana's face went white. "They mentioned something about showing the galaxy what humanity could really do. About making the other species understand that we weren't weak anymore." Marcus turned from the viewport, his jaw tight with anger. Sounds like someone's planning to start a war. Not start one, Rebecca said quietly, win one. The question is whether we can stop them before they decide to test their new toys. Unpopulated worlds, the hidden fleet coordinates Diana provided, led them to a region of space that officially didn't exist on any star charts. It was a place where nebulae formed natural barriers, and gravitational anomalies made navigation treacherous. Perfect for hiding something you didn't want found. Marcus guided the stellar vagrant through the shifting cosmic debris, relying on instruments that kept giving contradictory readings. Beside him, Rebecca studied tactical displays that showed energy signatures scattered throughout the region. Like hidden stars, 47 distinct power sources, she reported, ship-sized. But the configurations are unlike anything in Zephyrian. Databases, they're human designs, Vera confirmed from the navigation station, but modified beyond standard specifications. Whatever they did to those ships, they've been busy. Jake looked up from his engineering console, his face pale. Cap, those power readings. Some of these ships are putting out energy levels that should be impossible. We're talking about warp cores running at 300% nominal capacity. How is that possible without the ships tearing themselves apart? Rebecca asked. It shouldn't be. Jake replied, unless they found a way to reinforce the containment systems using alien technology. The implications hung heavy in the recycled air. Marcus had seen enough modified ships in his smuggling career to know that most jury-rigged systems failed catastrophically. If someone was running dozens of vessels with experimental modifications, they either had engineering knowledge far beyond normal human capabilities, or they didn't care about casualties. There, Vera said, highlighting a section of space ahead. Large structure, definitely artificial. It's using the nebula as camouflage. What emerged from the cosmic haze made them all fall silent. It was a space station, but built on a scale that dwarfed anything humans had constructed before. Kilometers long and bristling with weapons. It looked like someone had taken Earth's most advanced military designs and scaled them up beyond reason. That's not possible, Rebecca whispered. Human engineering doesn't work on that scale. The structural stresses alone, unless they're using Zephyrian construction techniques, Marcus said grimly, or technology from other species. The station was surrounded by ships moving in precise formations. From their current distance, the vessels looked like insects swarming around a hive. But as they drew closer, the true scope became apparent. These weren't just modified human ships, they were an entirely new class of vessel. Sleek and predatory. We need to get closer, Rebecca said. I have to know what they're planning. Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully, with respect. Getting closer to that thing is how people end up dead. Or worse. She turned to face him, and he saw something in her eyes that reminded him of the young woman who'd once talked about bridging the gap between species. Marcus, do you know why the Zephyrians chose me as their queen? Because you're brilliant, stubborn, and have a talent for politics. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Because I was expendable, a human who could serve as a figurehead while they maintained real power. They thought I'd be grateful for the position and never ask difficult questions. Marcus studied her expression, understanding dawning. But you did ask questions. I asked why human settlements in the Outer Rim were being abandoned. Why trade? Ships were disappearing. Why there were energy readings in empty space that no one wanted to investigate. She gestured toward the hidden fleet. This is why. Jake cleared his throat. Folks, we've got incoming signals. Someone knows we're here. The communications panel crackled to life with a woman's voice, cold and familiar from the recordings. They'd heard, unknown vessel, you are in restricted space. Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed. Marcus exchanged glances with Rebecca, then keyed the transmitter. This is Captain Vale of the merchant vessel Stellar Vagrant. We're responding to distress calls from this region. There was a pause, then laughter that sent chills down his spine. Marcus Vale. We meet again, old friend. The voice wasn't the same woman from the recordings. This one he recognized, though he'd hoped never to hear it again. Patricia Zhao, the officer Diana had mentioned. Someone. The director's vision conference room aboard the massive station felt more like a cathedral than a meeting space. Vast windows looked out onto the hidden fleet, while holographic displays showed star charts marking human colonies throughout the galaxy. At the head of the table sat Director Thomas Kane, a man whose calm demeanor couldn't quite hide the zealot's fire in his eyes. Marcus sat beside Rebecca, acutely aware of the armed guards stationed around the room. They'd been treated as honored guests since arriving, but the hospitality had an edge to it. Jake Vera and Diana remained aboard the stellar vagrant under protective custody, a polite way of saying hostage. "You've built something impressive here," Rebecca said, her royal training allowing her to sound genuinely admiring. "But I have to ask, what exactly are you planning to do with it?" Kane smiled, gesturing to the displays showing human settlements. "For too long, humanity has been content to survive on the scraps left by older species. We've accepted second-class status in a galaxy that should be ours. That ends now." "Through war?" Marcus asked. "Through demonstration," Kane corrected. "The other species need to understand that humanity is no longer weak, that we've evolved beyond their expectations." Patricia Zhao stood beside Kane, her military bearing unchanged despite the years. "We've been gathering resources, recruiting the best minds from across human space, engineers, scientists, soldiers, people who understand that sometimes progress requires difficult choices." Rebecca leaned forward. "People who were reported dead or missing. People who chose to disappear," Kane said. "People who saw the bigger picture and were willing to sacrifice comfortable lives for humanity's future." Marcus studied the star charts, noting the marked locations. "These are Zephyrian colonies," he said. "You're planning to attack them. We're planning to liberate them," Kane replied. "Humanity will no longer bow to alien authority. Not even beautiful, well-intentioned authority." His gaze fixed on Rebecca with uncomfortable intensity. She met his stare without flinching. "The Zephyrians offered me partnership, not subjugation. They believe in cooperation between species. They believe in control," Patricia said. "Subtle, sophisticated control. They've convinced humans that we need their guidance, their protection. Meanwhile, they limit our expansion, regulate our technology, and ensure we never become a threat to their dominance." Marcus felt the conversation taking a dangerous turn. "So your solution is to start a war that could destroy both species?" Kane stood, walking to the window overlooking his fleet. "Our solution is to demonstrate capabilities that will make war unnecessary. One decisive action that shows the galaxy what humanity has become." "Which colony?" Rebecca asked quietly. "Pardon, which Zephyrian colony? Are you planning to attack? Because that's what this is about, isn't it? A demonstration of power." Kane turned back to face them, his expression serene. "New Zephyr, the crown jewel of their expansion into human space. Home to 12 million beings, including 2 million humans who've chosen to live under alien rule." Rebecca's face went white. "You're talking about genocide." "I'm talking about liberation," Kane insisted. "The human population will be evacuated before we begin. They'll be given the choice to join us or return to Earth. The Zephyrians," he shrugged, "they'll serve as an example." Marcus felt sick. New Zephyr was one of the most successful examples of human-alien cooperation in the galaxy. The idea of destroying it was monstrous. "You can't do this." "We can, and we will," Patricia said. "Unless, of course, Her Majesty would like to propose an alternative." All eyes turned to Rebecca. Marcus could see her mind working, calculating options and outcomes. When she spoke, her voice was steady despite the circumstances. "I could order the evacuation of New Zephyr," she said slowly. "As queen, I have that authority, but not for this, not to enable mass murder." Kane nodded as if he'd expected that answer. "I thought you might say that. Which is why we have a secondary plan." The holographic displays shifted, showing a new set of coordinates. Earth, humanity's homeworld, with its billions of inhabitants and sprawling orbital cities. "If New Zephyr won't serve as an adequate demonstration," Kane said, "perhaps humanity's birth world will. We could liberate it from the ineffective governance that's allowed our species to stagnate." The threat hung in the air like poison. Marcus understood now this wasn't about alien oppression or human liberation. This was about power, pure and simple. Cain and his followers had built a fleet and now needed to justify its existence. "You're insane," Marcus said. "I'm visionary," Cain replied. "And in 3 days, the galaxy will understand the difference." Rebecca stood slowly, her royal bearing intact despite the circumstances. "Director Cain, you're making a mistake that will haunt humanity for generations." "I'm making a choice that will free humanity for generations," he countered. "The question is whether you'll be remembered as the queen who helped birth humanity's golden age, or the one who stood in its way." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of guards and officers who believed they were serving a noble cause. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who'd learned to command respect. "I've seen what happens when species choose fear over cooperation, Director. I've watched worlds burn because someone decided their vision was worth any price." She stepped closer to Cain, unafraid despite being surrounded by his people. "And I've learned that the people who talk most about liberation are usually the ones planning to become the next oppressors." Cain's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Thank you for clarifying your position, Your Majesty. It makes our next decision much easier." Marcus felt the walls closing in around them. 3 days to prevent a war that could consume the galaxy. 3 days to stop a madman with a fleet of impossible ships and the conviction that he was saving humanity. 3 days to prove that sometimes the real enemy isn't an alien species, it's the darkness that humans carry within themselves.